All right, good morning, Cougs, and welcome to another Daily Coug Connect. My name is Erin Hansen, and I am a human resource consultant based on the Everett campus. Today, I am here to teach you some tips and tricks about Microsoft Word. I was going to teach you some tricks about the other Microsoft Office suite of programs as well, but in order to not try to cram too much into today's presentation, I decided to just limit it to Word. If you enjoyed today's presentation, let me know in the chat function if you'd like to learn some tricks on Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook as well. Even if you feel like you already know Microsoft Word pretty well, I encourage you to stick around because you might learn something new. I initially learned a lot of these things in a training I took about 5 years ago, and I didn't even think I needed the training at all because I thought I knew my way around Word pretty well, but I ended up learning a lot of helpful information. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat box and I can address them in the end. So before we begin, a quick tip for everyone is that many of the functions we use today will use one or more of the keys on the screen, being Control, Shift, and Alt. And in fact, many of the tips that I'll provide are easier to perform because you don't need to navigate between the keyboard and the mouse. That being said, some of them will use some simple mouse clicks. And also please note that these actions are specific to Windows platforms, though my understanding is that many of these work in either operating system, the difference being that in Apple, you would use the command function instead of the control key. So basically, the keys shown here outlined in purple are going to be our key players. Sorry, the pun was intended and notably terrible, and I apologize, I could not resist myself. The tab and backspace keys will also be used a bit, as well as the keys in the blue boxes being the up, down, right, and left arrows, and then things like home and page up, page down, insert, and delete. The keys highlighted in yellow and red, when paired with the keys in purple, are the ones that I probably use most frequently in my day-to-day work. In the following slides, I've highlighted a few of the functions in yellow, which correspond with the keys that are highlighted here in yellow. Many of you are probably aware of the functions of the keys highlighted in red already, but some of you may not be. And also, as a heads up, some of these functions are a little bit easier to remember than others because the letters are more logical with how they relate to the function. So starting off with control functions, I'm going to first address the ones which are easier to remember because of mnemonics. Many of you will already be familiar with these, but I consider control-based functions to be the basics of working more efficiently in the Microsoft Office suite of programs. These are my go-to shortcuts. The control functions listed on this screen work in basically most programs in the Microsoft Office suite. I'll demonstrate them briefly in Word in a moment, but please be aware that they do work kind of across programs. So I encourage you to test these and other tips out in multiple programs to learn what works kind of across multiple functions. So starting off, these first few are some of the most commonly known key shortcuts. These are geared toward navigating through the document and performing sort of high-level functions. So Control N is to open a new document, O is to open an existing document, S saves a document, P prints, and F is for find. As I mentioned, the text highlighted in yellow are the ones which I use really frequently in my work, whether it's formatting an email, reviewing a document, what have you. So moving on to font changes, as you see listed here, Control B changes a font to bold, U is for underline, and I is for italicize. So again, B bold, U underline, I italicize. Some are easier to remember than others. So if you select a word and use this function, you can perform or undo the function. So for example, if you select a word that's already bold and press Control B again, it will unbold it. And that's probably not even a word, but we're just gonna roll with it. The Control and plus key makes text into subscript, and then Control Shift plus makes it into superscript. Control Shift and then the greater or less than keys increase and decrease font size. And then next, Control A and C are both ones that are easier to remember. Control A is for all, Control C is for the copy function. Now these next ones are a little bit less intuitive, but the more you use them, it'll just become second nature and you really won't have to think about it. So Control X is for cut. And if you can't remember if C stands for cut or copy, one way to keep them straight is to think about the X in the cut function looking kind of like a pair of scissors. Control V is for paste. Z is for undoing an action and Y redoes an action. For Z and Y, these can be used multiple times to undo or redo multiple steps. You can undo changes even after you've saved and then save again, so long as the document is still open. And you can just keep doing that over and over, but by default, Office saves the last 100 undoable actions rather. So there is a little bit of a limit, but you can really undo and redo quite a few things. And these next two, the bottom two, are some of my absolute favorites. I use them all the time. Control plus the spacebar removes existing formatting in a document. So even an email, if you want to change the font so that it looks like you're the one who wrote something, even though you copy pasted it, you just go Control Space. And then the Control K allows you to quickly hyperlink rather than having to navigate through the hyperlink function. So these next few also help you more quickly navigate through a document. Control End, which navigates to the end of a document. Control Home navigates back to the beginning. Control plus the left and right arrows moves a cursor one word at a time, whereas Control and the up or down arrow will navigate up and down through paragraphs. A few more helpful control-based functions. Control Backspace deletes a previous word rather than deleting letter by letter. And conversely, Control Delete deletes the next word in the series. This can be really handy when you're writing an email or a document, because rather than navigating to the earlier part of the sentence with just the arrow keys or just the mouse, or by simply deleting all the text until you get to that word, it's much quicker to use either the Control and arrow keys or Control and Backspace or Delete keys. So now that we've reviewed these control key functions, I'll show you how they're used in Word. So I've got a faculty offer letter here that I'm going to pull up. Just a second. All right, so you should see a faculty offer letter up now. So starting, I'm not going to go over the new open save functions. Those ones are pretty self-explanatory, but I will start with the font changes. So if I'm going through this document and I need to modify it, and note there are some weird formatting issues in this, and we're going to address those later, by the way. But I'm going to go through this. I'm going to kind of start formatting my faculty offer letter. So as I scroll through, I see that this workload here is not bold like the rest of these words are. So I can just go Control B, and now I've bolded workload. So that's the same format as everything else. I am going to say, I want to make sure that this person understands that accumulated annual leave must be used prior to the termination date. So I'm going to underline that, Control U. And then as I scroll through my document, I see that the faculty manual is referred in multiple places, and it's italicized, but this instance is not. And so I'm going to Control I, and I'm going to italicize that. Next, if I go Control A, I have selected all of my text. If I scroll through up and down, you'll see everything is selected. And then say for whatever reason I want to copy this, I'm going to go Control C. I'm going to go Control End, and that's going to navigate to the end of the document. And I'm going to say Control V, and now I've repasted all of that content. I can now go Z and undo that. I can go Y, and I can redo all of that. I can also, if I want to maybe move things around in this document. So I'm going to move this dual enrollment part down to after the new employee benefits packet. I can just say Control X, and I can Control V and paste that down at the bottom. Again, when it comes to formatting, the Control space bar is super valuable. If you'll notice here in this paragraph, there are actually two different types of text. So you'll see this one is ITC stone serif, this one is Cambria. And if I want to change the formatting on this, note that it will change it to the default formatting. So it's actually going to change the font size in this instance as well. But if I go Control spacebar, I've now made all of that uniform text. Also note that it does remove the hyperlink in that HRS website link there. So if we want to fix that, all we need to do is get our HRS homepage URL. So I'm going to go Control copy. I'm in my Firefox right now, so I've copied that. I'm going to go back to my new employee resources website. I'm going to go Control K. Control V to paste that in there. And now I have uploaded the hyperlink to that section. Well, now it's not showing, but I did it, I swear. All right, so then we've gone through the end and home arrows and then left and right. So Control and using the right or left arrows, you'll see is navigating through that sentence there in that same paragraph. And if I want to go up or down, if I do the Control function, it will navigate through those various paragraphs. Okay, now back to some more tips and tricks for you. I'm going to pull up some additional slides here. Okay. So, okay, moving on. Now we're going to look at some of the functions which use other or additional keys, such as the Alt and Shift keys. These next few apply to selecting and aligning content. So again, I'm going to demonstrate this in a Word document later, just as a FYI. So first, double-clicking on a single word selects that word. Triple-clicking on a single word selects the entire paragraph. Control plus clicking on one word in a sentence selects the entire sentence itself. This one's a bit more unique, but if you use the Alt and click and drag your mouse, you can select a rectangular block of text. If you want to go click, shift, click. So if you click on, say, the beginning of a paragraph, you press shift and you click again, it's going to select all that content between those two clicks. If you double click in any white space, you can modify your alignment easily. So whether it's right, left, or center, and there's even some sort of in between that you can get as well. And I didn't mention this one in the control functions before because it's a little less commonly used, but Control J can be used to justify your text. So if you want it to be justified on each side of the paragraph. And then Control L, E, and R can be used to align left, center, and right, respectively, in addition to using the bars at the top. Then if we add the Shift key to our Control key, for example, Control Shift End or Control Shift Home, it will highlight all text from the point after the cursor or the point before the cursor, respectively. Similarly, just using the Shift function, so not using Control in this circumstance, if you pair Shift with the page up or page down keys, you can select more text at a time, but it doesn't navigate to the beginning and end of a document. All right, next with formatting. The format painter is a super useful function. I use it a lot. Basically, if you select text, which is formatted the way you want it, click the format painter and then paint that section of text that you want to be the same as the other format. So maybe it's the font color or size or something. It'll replicate that automatically. And another aspect of that function, which not a lot of people are familiar with, is that if you double click on that format painter, it actually keeps the format painter on until you unclick it or undo it. So if you need to change a bunch of sections of text at once, you don't need to keep re-clicking the format painter button. So it's super, super handy. Then if you use Shift and F3, that will change the case of your text. So you can easily change to lowercase, uppercase, or capitalizing each word. And you can also do this via clicking under the font section of your Word program. And if you select text and press F2, then move your cursor to where you want to place that text, then press enter, it will move it for you. And when I demonstrate this in Word, you'll even see it out at the bottom of the screen. It'll say move where, because it's asking me, where do you want to move this text to? You can also create your own autocorrect, which is really useful when you have to use a set of words continually in a document. So an example would be that if I was typing something about the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine and I needed to refer to it specifically by that long name multiple times, rather than going in Control Copy or anything, you can set it up so that if I type SCOM, it will automatically enter in the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine instead of the acronym that I've put in. You can also, if you're looking to break up a document, you can use essentially 3 hyphens and then press enter. You'll get a horizontal line. You can also do this with equal signs, hash marks, or asterisks. If you use this in Outlook, you can also do a three instances of an underscore, and you'll get a bolded line as well. All right, so another really useful function is showing paragraph marks and other hidden formatting symbols. This can be done using the paragraph marker at the top of the page just by clicking on it, or you can do this by pressing Control-Shift-8. And if you've got a stubborn issue in your formatting and you're just not getting it to change the way you want it to, I highly recommend using this function to check to see if there's some sort of a hidden issue that's causing a problem. Again, when editing a document, using track changes to show what changes will, essentially what you've made is going to be really helpful for anyone if you're passing a document back and forth so they don't have to compare word for word. My one word of caution here is that I love track changes, but there is one issue that it can cause, and I can't get it to replicate this morning, but it's happened to me multiple times. Essentially, you've got a document you're working on, and you've got a page break for some reason, and you can't remove the darn page break. It's a really stubborn one. If you've got track changes on, that's probably your issue. You have to turn track changes off and then delete the page break and then turn it back on if you want to keep editing that document. I have no idea why this happens, but it is a known issue, and it's definitely very frustrating. So now I'm going to move back into Word and demonstrate these functions that we have just covered. One moment here. Okay, so now covering these ones we've just talked about. So first of all, I've got my faculty offer letter here. If I'm going to go up to the content of the offer letter and I want to double click on a word, it's going to highlight that single word. If I want to triple click on that word, it's going to highlight the entire paragraph. And if I press Control and click that word, it'll highlight the entire sentence itself. As I mentioned, this one's not super frequently used, but if you use the Alt function and drag, you will get a square piece of text. This can be kind of a tricky one too, because now if I were to delete this text, it's actually deleted anything that was in that box, not specific words or anything, but just what was covered in that square. So next is if you want to select an entire paragraph, but you don't want to hold the mouse button down, if you click at the front, and this can work for anything if you want to just do maybe a couple sentences, then if you press Shift and click again, you're going to select all the content between those two clicks. If I'm going down to my white space to try to align some text somewhere else, if I double click anywhere, I can change my alignment, right, left, center, and there's, like I said, even some sort of intermediary spacing. So you don't need to go up to these top keys to change that. All right, and then as I mentioned, Control, I'll start down here. If I go Control, Shift, End, it's going to highlight anything to the end of the document from where I've clicked. If I go Control, Shift, Home, it's going to highlight all the text above where I selected that, where I put the cursor. And as I mentioned, if you used Shift and the page up function, you'll highlight more text, but it's not going to move to the top or bottom. All right, and now moving on to Format Painter. As I mentioned, this one is really, really handy. Basically, if I'm looking at my text here, I see that I've got my ITC stone serif here. I can use my Format Painter, and you don't have to select all of it. You can select just a little bit of it. And then if I use my painter there, I've now changed that text to be the same format as the text up here. As I mentioned, really, really handy, especially if you've got to do multiple things, is using the double click. So now I've kept my painter on, and I can go through multiple areas in the document where I see that text is a different format, and without having to go revisit the Format Painter button at the top. All right, and then as I mentioned, Shift and F3 will change the case. So if I'm going Shift F3, I've now changed that to all caps. So if you want to go through a document, edit, change any formatting, if you want to go for branding guidelines or anything like that, this is a super easy way to do it rather than having to retype anything. So in addition, at the top, you can do this here as well, and you can change it to toggle case, which isn't an option easily. It's not one that you can do with the F3 function, but that's also not a super commonly used case anyway. So instead, I would just use the shortcut button. All right, and now if I want to move a document, or it's not a document, sorry, a paragraph or two, say I'm gonna now move this benefits packet information down below the dual enrollment part. So as I mentioned, you're gonna see in a second where it's gonna ask me where I wanna move this to. So if I say, if I've selected this information, I'm gonna say, press F2, and there's a little part down here that says move where, and I'm gonna place my cursor here and press enter, and now I've easily moved that without having to do the control copy, control paste function. All right, and then for enabling your own autocorrect. So this one is really kind of a neat function that is offered, and I am going to show you how to get there. So if we go to our options and we go to proofing, you'll see autocorrect options. So if I want to, for example, instead of typing out Washington State University every time, if I type WSU, and I want it to say Washington State University. Say I'm writing a really long document or something and I don't want to have to keep writing all that out. I am going to say, welcome to WSU. And it automatically changes that for me. So it can be a very quick, a good time saver, basically. And now if I want to, for some reason, break up this benefits page so that it's more clearly delineated between sections or something, as I mentioned, I can do 3 hyphens, press enter, and now I've created a solid line. I can do 3 equal marks, create a different one. I can do hashtag, hash marks, and then I can also do asterisks. So all those give you a different format of horizontal line. So as I mentioned, the paragraph marker is really helpful if you've got weird formatting issues. This one I end up using a lot. If you've got a document where maybe multiple people contributed different parts of the document, and you've got to figure out why there are funky things going on with this formatting, this is super, super handy. So if I've turned on my formatting here, and so I just use the button up here at the top. But like I said, you can also do Control Shift and 8, which turns it off, but I'm going to add that back on there. Now, when I'm looking for what kind of issues are occurring in this document, it's more easy to see them. So, if a document has been changed over a period of time, different authors, some people use two spaces in the front of a sentence. Some people only use 1. So one thing I can do is go find and replace, and I can say 2 spaces here, 1 space here, replace all those. And now I've made 72 replacements in this document where now there are no instances of 2 spaces at the front of the sentence. This one is a common issue that is encountered, especially honestly in like Word documents and things where someone has used a soft, I think it's called a soft stop or soft end at the end of this paragraph. And what that means is they pressed Shift and Enter at the same time. So now if I have my text justified like this, it is creating an issue where there's some really weird formatting and we've got to fix that before we send this offer letter out. So if you've got this paragraph marker on, you can see that that's what the issue is. And if you just say delete, now we've fixed that alignment so that it looks better. And then, as I mentioned, track changes is super, super handy. Control Shift E. And so now if I want to show anytime I have maybe done a find and replace where I said, anytime I see HRS, I want it to say Human Resource Services. And I'm going to say replace all. Now they're going to be able to see anytime that I've made that change. And I did have a caps content on, so be aware of that. Essentially, if the HRS was all caps, then it's going to be all caps going forward. But then again, like I said, we can change that easily by using our Shift F3. So now we've fixed that problem. One last tip I have for you is that the page break issue of, and let's see if I can get it to do it. Actually, I've got a document here. I'll show you. So here's faculty manual. If I turn on my paragraph marks here, the way that I got this document was by saving a PDF to a Word document. And when you do that, it's often that Adobe kind of says, well, I'm going to make whatever I'm seeing, or Word rather says, I'm going to make whatever I'm seeing in Adobe show up the way that it looks like, in my document here. So there will be spaces where there's an improper spacing, right? So you'll see at the end of this document, or at the end of this page rather, there's a paragraph marker when there shouldn't be one. If we delete that, it's going to actually put the content back together where it should be. If you're going through a really long document, this can be really helpful. Essentially, if you don't use page breaks, or if you end up using the return function instead of putting in a page break, you can end up with some really odd formatting that gets sort of frustrating when it moves around pretty quickly. Like you'll move one thing and it'll suddenly move a whole host of things. So that can certainly be why. So again, I recommend just turn those on. It can be kind of fatiguing for the eyes. So I recommend actually reviewing documents once with and once without that on, just to see where the issues are. But it can be a really, really easy way to determine where those issues are. And now I don't know if I'm going to be able to find any of my page break issues here, but let's see. I've got my track changes, Control Shift E. I delete my page break. So I've deleted this page break in theory right now. It's not actually gone because the track changes have been turned on. So what I would have to do is Control Shift E, turn those track changes off again, and then actually delete that page break. Okay, and moving back to my slides here. Okay, so those are the tips. Those are the tips and tricks I have for you today. Let me know in the chat function, like I said, if you'd like to see any additional tips and tricks regarding Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and if you're willing, drop something in the chat box about one new thing you learned today, if there was anything. And obviously, if you have any questions or want me to review anything, feel free to ask me in the chat function, or feel free to shoot me an email as well. I'm going to check out my chat function here. Okay. Yes, Lucinda, I can certainly send you my list of tricks. I'm giving you a tip there. Google's keyboard. Oh, Dom, thanks for that link. Very helpful. Mark's provided a link to show everybody about using Alt keys and like pressing the F key commands. All right, Catherine, thank you. I will definitely keep that in mind. Julia wants some Outlook. How to handle indenting issues in a document with multiple indents. Ooh, that's a good one. I want to see what specifically you were talking about in that one. Often, if that could be an issue that's created to, or it's related to the saving in Adobe or like a PDF to a Word function, that could be the problem. But I'd be interested, JS, if you want to reach out to me and let me know what you're looking for. They'll say I want some Outlook ones, and everybody's saying thank you. Awesome. Oh, yay, Anita, good thing. Hyperlink, yes, very, very handy. Indents can be added by clicking on the ruler at the top. Thank you, Mark. Here, yes, I will. All right, excellent. So that's what I have for you today. So thanks for joining me. Remember to tune into Monday's Daily Coug Connect to hear Dawn Reed's presentation on tough conversations. Have a safe and fun 4th of July, and go Cougs.